Welcome to Lajoyful Life, the podcast for finding true happiness in every aspect of your life through spiritual, physical, emotional, and mental health. I'm your host, Anthony Lajoy, and thanks for joining us for another episode of exploration into personal success. Conner Gleason. So Conner is actually a history teacher at the local high school. Well, a local high school, not the. There's multiple of them around here. So he is a history teacher. He has a lot of knowledge, obviously, about history. You guessed it. And another thing that he's really good at is talking about some areas that he's traveled to. He's done a lot of traveling, and hopefully we'll get into that a little bit. But also he's really good about talking about the mechanics, vehicles, tools, machinery, all that stuff throughout history. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well and how that's progressed and either made life maybe easier or even a little bit more hard for us in some cases. So Conner, my friend, welcome to the Joyful Life podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is very exciting.
Absolutely. I think we have a lot to talk about, so hopefully we'll get it all in 30 minutes or so. 30 to 45 to 50, who knows?
Yeah, typical lesson.
Exactly.
It's like, next period, kids, all right.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. Well, our paths kind of cross a little bit in college, so I'll go a little before that and then kind of jump into how that weird interaction went down. So I'm born in South Miami, raised in Hollywood, so like South Florida.
Yeah, not Hollywood, California.
No, not Hollywood, California.
When I first
built around the same time. But,
when I first moved to Florida, I was like, wait, Hollywood?
Yeah.
It's nowhere around me, but it is.
They're capitalizing on the popularity of the name. So, went to Catholic school there. From there, I ended up at Hillsdale College in Michigan. And this Grand Valley boy over here thinks he knows what he's talking about.
Go Lakers.
Like, go Chargers. So, graduated early from there. Went right into the workforce at classical prep where I work today. Started teaching math and science because you got to diversify. But you also have to specialize, which is weird. And here we are doing Run Club and doing Joyful Life together, man. So
that's right.
That's the Reader's Digest version of it.
That was a quick version. I like that. We did meet at Run Club and just kind of hit it off right away. And I immediately like, hey man, you got to come on the podcast. You're too interesting for the world not to hear a little more about this.
Well, thank you.
But yeah, so we both went to college in Grand Rapids, kind of crazy. We were probably there right about the same time.
Probably.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like, and now we live like 2 minutes from each other. So we seem to kind of hang out in the same areas, man.
Mm-hmm. We have swam in the same circles, just on different sides of the circle. Well,
and you mentioned too that you've done some stuff on Jeopardy.
Oh, I haven't personally done stuff on Jeopardy, but I've got friends who have, and David Madden, who is himself a multiple-time Jeopardy champion, he runs the National History Bowl, and I've done a lot of work with him, or for him, I should say, in Germany for internationals, here in Florida across for state regionals, and we're actually, my school's hosting our first National History Bowl tournament this coming March. That's a big milestone for me. Obviously, it's a big milestone for the school because we've done other tournaments in the past, but never won through this program. So it's a big time for growth. For all involved.
That'll be awesome, man. Lots of good stuff happened for you. That's exciting to see.
Yeah, we're on the up and up.
It's fantastic.
I'm sleeping less, but
aren't we all?
Yeah, we're converting that into productivity, I suppose.
Yeah, I feel you there. But that kind of leads me, though, because I wanted to ask you, when teaching, especially at the high school level, I think we see our modern youth, call them, they're not millennials anymore, right?
No, they call themselves
you
Gen
and I
Z. Yeah.
Jay-Z?
Gen Z.
No. Gen Z.
They should only be so cool to be Jay-Z.
All right. Well, no, so I think we've seen it a little bit. I've seen it a little bit in our generation, but especially now with the next generation coming in, Gen Z, where I think they get really caught up in spending time with friends, going having your phone, going to the movies, doing all these things. That's very very instant gratification, that type of thing. So I feel like you kind of focus more on you've actually told me how you focus on total education, so it's mind, body, and spirit as well.
Yeah.
And what's the importance of that you found, and how that's affected your classroom?
Ooh, there's a lot of time back there.
Yeah.
So let's start with the students themselves. So when we were growing up, I feel like our parents and the generation that came before us looked at us, and they saw video games, and they saw ever more sophisticated technology for communication, and they said, well, that's going to rot your brain, that's going to turn you into zombies and whatnot, and then we kind of ignored that, but so we continued it on to this next generation, and they have the same problems kind of as we did. Like, they're really, like you said, they're all up on their phones, they care about instant gratification, they're not really looking to the future, but they're doing it a lot more, like, unironically than we are, or maybe more ironically, depending on who you ask. So we look at our phones, and like we take a picture and post it to Facebook, right? And we say something like, "Lovely day here in Tampa, Florida." They might do the same thing and be like, "Man, this world is so pretty. It's gonna be a shame when it's all gone." Like, they might do something like that, dude, just for the humor of it or something. So there is a bit of a disconnect between us and them, and the understanding of, like, what is the next step. So we're still young, our generation is, and we're still kind of trying to figure out, like, what life has in store for us, and what we need to do to succeed, at a personal, professional level. And so we have to do that and kind of try to help guide these next generations of youths. The youths.
And that's kind of important too when you get where you want to be, or I guess when you have a focus of where you want to be, you always have to turn around and help the next one in line, right?
Exactly.
And there's a lot of that I don't see happening. The other day I drove down the road, and this is kind of tangenting, but I was driving down the road. Imagine that.
Not running?
Yeah, no, I was actually driving.
What kind of fitness guru is this guy?
Man. But I was going down, and this gentleman in front of me had to get over a couple of lanes, and traffic definitely stopped. Busy Tampa traffic, you get it. And I mean, you lose 2-3 seconds. At worst, you miss the light, right? Is it frustrating? Yes, it sure is. But he was coming out of my lane, and the next guy coming in just lays on his horn because he was so infuriated this guy was pulling out in front of him. And it wasn't a dangerous move. Everyone was kind of stopped, but he was holding up traffic. And then when said truck that was honking out and drives by, I see him in my rear view kind of hang out his window and probably curse the guy out, right? And I thought to myself, how sad is that in a society where we use words, we communicate, we should treat each other with kindness, and everybody in turn treat each other the same way, and spread that kindness, spread that helping spirit. You're out here freaking out at somebody because they pull out in front of you and held up your day for a few seconds. And I just thought, man, that's really sad. I mean, I can't say that I'm not guilty of it. I've felt the same way. I've never cussed somebody out on the road. That's not who I am. But I've definitely kind of mumbled to myself for sure, right?
Yeah.
But it's just kind of it's a sad situation, and I think we need to definitely teach the up and coming generation how maybe not to do that.
Yeah, and that's difficult to pull off in the classroom, but that's why teaching doesn't just happen in the classroom. As teachers, we're taught that everything. Teachers get taught too. So everything we do, every way we model ourselves and portray ourselves to the kids we teach, they learn from that as much if not more than the material and the lesson plans and all that stuff. So when it comes to educating the whole student, so mind, body, heart, and soul, there's obviously a big focus on the mind, but if we're talking about turning these kids into adults, it's teaching them patience, it's teaching them respect, it's teaching them how to handle themselves under pressure, flexibility, that sort of thing.
Amen, brother. I couldn't agree more with you on that. But modern technology, we talked about it a little bit with the phones and that. That's brought a sense of complexity to our society, right? I look back, and my favorite period of history is the Old West. I go back in time, man. I'm all about that time period. I love the styles. I love horses. I'm huge into that kind of stuff. So I would go back then, and so obviously I've watched a lot of Western movies, which we all know the movies are real, right?
Yeah,
Everything that happens in a
as a
movie.
history teacher, every single thing.
So accurate.
Okay,
So
corral.
accurate.
That's real. That's exactly correct.
You hear the actual history of that, and it's interesting. It's like, it's not quite how it happened. Okay.
I do that in my class.
Yeah, it's neat. But yeah, so I look back, and that's just a period of history that I use as an example. You know, the one-room schoolhouse, right? And the kids got out in recess, and they went out and they played, and they probably, got in fights. They probably got black eyes. And we know they did, right?
Yeah.
And there weren't always adults around, but kids worked it out, right? And in society now, with the Facebook and Instagram and texting and everything else, we see a lot of cyberbullying. And it's sad, it's unfortunate. I wish it wouldn't happen. We need to do everything we can to support that, not being there. But also, I think, it's my opinion, that maybe our younger generation they don't have enough to work up their energy or to get rid of their energy, right?
Yeah.
They have all this pent up energy. Yeah,
exactly.
And for someone like you have the opportunity to help them use their minds, help them, get out and maybe inspire them to do a little bit more so that they have a fulfilling day. What's your opinion on technology and the complexity of our society?
Well, using the example you gave is kind of like the Western schoolhouse, right? So look at a child back on the frontier, and look at a child today. Back then, there was no medium. If you're interacting with other students, you're interacting organically in a very relatively open environment. Now, yes, it's more strict, and there's a lot more rules associated with it than there are today. But it's organic. There's no okay, I'll text you when I get home. There's no I'll send you a Snapchat or whatever. Like, you talk to them in that moment, right then and there, in that exact environment, be it a prairie schoolhouse or even like a small town schoolhouse or whatever, or something like that. Nowadays, there's always a medium. So you'll see groups of kids talking, and one of them will be staring at their phone doing something while they're having a conversation, like a full-on conversation. So like they're almost, it feels like to me there almost has to be a medium. Like, there's got to be something there to hold their interest, because I couldn't give you a reason as to why. It's just happening. It's just what they want to do. So because of that, with ever decreasing organic interaction, there's more room for error and more room for, let's say, stupid decisions when you remove that medium in an environment like school. So there's a group of kids at school that I like to say that whenever they get the chance to make a good decision or a stupid decision, they'll make the stupid decision every single time, like without fail. If someone is not watching them, they will do something dumb.
Right. Which is a teacher for sure. That's I think experience is one of the best teachers. But I guess it's kind of about not just teaching them how to make the right decision, but telling them and showing them why it's important to make the decision.
Exactly.
And I think that's huge because it's anymore. I think with parents working so much and whatnot, I've seen a lot of situations where I truly feel that the child in question is doing a certain action, they're doing a bad action or what have you to get attention.
Yeah.
Negative attention is better than no attention in their mind. And as part of what I'm trying to do with this brand is kind of show the younger generation, as well as any generation out there, that doing good things is a positive, really good feeling as well. I mean, right now we have an emotional challenge happening where I'm challenging everybody who listens to the podcast and follows my brand to do at least one good thing every day that makes you feel good inside. Whether that's paying for the order behind you at the drive-through, opening a door for somebody, saying, "Hey man, like, how you doing today? Like, you look awesome. Have you been working out?" That makes you feel good, and the other person feels good as well. And they're like, "Yeah, I have been working out. Like, thanks so much for noticing." And people kind of, we keep our phones on us and we keep our face down and just get up and smell the roses.
That's the
that's
thing.
pretty important.
That's the thing with the medium too. Is like, it's a shield. So if you're sitting in a room and you're by yourself and you see somebody else by yourself, like, you're naturally drawn to go talk to them. But if one of you was on your phone, you're not paying attention to the room.
It's almost like they already have a friend, so I'm not going to go talk to them.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel that.
Universally true. And so I'm putting that back into a schoolroom. That's perspective. And what is history but to teach perspective? So, like, looking at it this way, Like, oh, that person's on their phone. They probably don't want to talk to me. Or the other way, oh, that person's on their phone. Let me just go interrupt that. So outside of a history classroom, for a student, probably the most important thing to learn perspective, at least in the long term, is travel. It's a big deal. It's a big, expensive investment, but it's a great way to learn different perspectives. Because like even something which a lot of people might consider fairly basic, like Europe, right? Just go anywhere in Europe. You're off the plane. You're in a world that is just so much older than coming from the United States, a world that you've lived in your whole life. So everything's closer together. It's metropolitan. It's compacted. Like there's just about nowhere important you can't get to by walking. So in this country where like everyone owns a car, and if you don't, you have Uber, and like it'll challenge your perspective. It'll challenge your norm, because like just Florence, for example, you walk 5 minutes from the Basilica di Santa Maria Novella, and you're right in the middle of the city. You're right in front of the government building. So like, it's really interesting to see just how close together in the old world, in Florence in particular, like God, religion, the practice of faith was to government and the running of society.
Yeah.
And so, but that's the thing. Like, you have to make that connection. So you get there and you're like, oh wow, that's interesting. So just seeing that is a marker of personal growth, because you learn something. Mm-hmm. And you now have a different perspective. Like, oh, okay, that makes sense. All right. Yeah.
In the times I've traveled to Europe a couple of times, I'm sure I've seen a lot less than you have, but the couple of times that I've been there, both my family and I were very impressed by the fact that in Europe, especially like in Spain and France, they truly cherish their history. Mm-hmm. I mean, the basilicas there, first of all, they're gorgeous, right? And beautiful. But they're maintained. They cherish them. They take care of them. Here, that building's old, let's tear it down, right? And we don't make buildings as quality as over there as well. I mean, the Romans, jeepers.
The Italians are still driving on Roman roads.
That's insane.
Have you been to Michigan? Have you seen what the roads look like?
It's a good point. But I think that has almost fostered a little bit our that spirit, which, to be fair, America grew so fast, I think, that maybe we had to lay roads quick. We had to put up cheap buildings. We had to do what we could do just to get it up. And that's fine. I understand that. But we also haven't been around for nearly as long as Europe has. But I think that the point is that when you build some of the ways that we do in a cheap fashion, sometimes, not always, it kind of fosters that spirit of, oh, if it's old, throw it away and get new.
Yeah.
Instead of take care of what you have. And it's the same old story throughout history. Human nature, right?
Yeah.
Where we greed, jealousy. There's countless bad things that happen, but there's a lot of good things that happen too. But we can learn a lot from history. And you're exactly correct that traveling is a great way to do that. You can learn about those things. But what's some stuff from back in history that really sticks out to you, that you've seen, maybe that we've learned from now? Some things that history's repeating itself.
Okay.
And
yeah. So, man, history's repeating itself. Let's think about that. Well, in the early Renaissance, there is a sort of like proto-nationalism going on. So I say that it's not real nationalism, because look at Italy, for example. You've got a whole bunch of different peoples and a whole bunch of different societies that they're all unified by language and culture. But what separates them is just the fact that like they're not the other people, right? So it's tribalism, but with society. It's really weird. And if you use the word tribalism, the first thing that pops to mind, that comes to mind is the current political landscape of the United States. So again, we are the same people. We speak the same language. We have the same values. We have the same backgrounds. And yet, what is one thing that divides us at a level where, like, brother can turn against brother, kind of like civil war is politics. So I mean, imagine go home over Thanksgiving and just say something just offhand political, and just watch the chaos go down. It's like, that's your family.
That's the number one thing we're not supposed to do, right?
No, you're not supposed to. But like,
it's
bear witness.
Yeah.
And just see what happens. And that's people who have loved each other their whole lives. That's family. Can you imagine that happening between total strangers?
Yeah.
So even then, you got people, again, united by a common country, a common nation, a common language, common culture, and one little thing like politics can just throw all that out the window. So that led to a series of religious and political wars in the Renaissance, and many civil wars. It kind of culminates in the Reformation that tears the Holy Roman Empire apart.
Yeah, it's interesting how you can say that one particular topic can be really make people dig their heels in, and it's again, it kind of goes back to that human nature, right?
Yeah.
We all want what we want, and sometimes we can't open our eyes and say, all right, what would you like? And it kind of goes back to common courtesy. When you have a guest over, you see what they would like. You ask them what you can do for them, or in customer service as well. I come from a customer service background.
You're an expert on that.
Yeah, right. And you learn to treat others with respect, and to say, hey, this is what I'd like. What would you like? How can we work this out together? And it's a game. It's a game. Games people play. There's actually a book written about that. Called Games People Play.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I read part of it. I didn't read the entire thing. I don't remember why I stopped reading it. It was a good book that was very interesting. But it talks about how, when you have a conversation, you might say X, expecting said person to say Y.
Yeah.
And when they say Z instead, then that means you need to say, P, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool, and you think about it, and it's so true.
That is true.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool book. So check that out. Games People Play. It's a good book if you're up for a good read.
Who's it by?
I don't remember. I really don't recall.
Sure, a quick Google search.
Yeah. Actually, we can let's pull it up right here. We'll talk amongst yourselves while I'm pulling this up here.
Yeah.
It's a nice thing about
independent study kids.
Yeah, right. Games People Play book.
Not the song.
Yeah, apparently there's a song by it. Where is this one? Right here. Games People Play. Wow, guys, it's only $7.
Wow.
Well, no, sorry, on Google Play. So I guess you can do that. But I don't see who the...
Eric Byrne.
Eric Byrne.
There you go.
Yeah. It's only 216 pages.
That's a week.
Yeah, easy. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Nice.
How much do you read?
I try to read whenever I can. It's mostly for work though nowadays, because research and making presentations and helping the kids understand the time period and stuff. The last book I read cover to cover was The Wild Blue by Stephen Ambrose.
Okay.
So it's World War II era essentially. He goes into like an in-depth character study of George McGovern, who later ran for president and never really talked about the whole he was a pilot in World War II thing.
Really?
I know. It's like,
so he didn't use that as a reason to run with.
Like you'd think, right? But no, he didn't. So yeah, that was really interesting, looking at McGovern's early life and what it was like to go into the Army Air Force and go through the process and see how like kind of living in the Army worked. So just as an example, they had some kind of say over where they were going to be training and stationed while they're in the States, and so they had to pick a top 3. So they knew that number 1 on that list was never going to happen. So they did the list in opposite order. They put the place that they wanted to go towards the bottom, and then the place that they didn't want to go at the top. And it turns out they were right. So they got stationed exactly where they wanted to be by kind of gaming the system.
Oh, that's kind of neat.
Yeah. So it's like, man, I hate Honolulu. I better put that very low on this list. I would not want to be.
Put that at number 7.
Yeah, that's the worst place ever.
I wonder if that would work. Anybody in the military, if you're looking to get stationed somewhere new, try that theory and then get back to me on it. I'd love to know. So you'll be my guinea pig. What's the coolest place you traveled, man? Talk a little bit about Europe here, but
oh gosh, I was in South Africa in 2011.
Dude, I would love to go there.
Yes. Yeah, it was out in the middle of nowhere. So we flew into Jayberg and just drove for like 3 hours out into a friend of my dad's has a land up there that he kind of runs hunts on, and it's also a farm. And
Hook a brother up.
Yeah, well,
I'm kidding, but I'm actually serious.
he's actually not kidding.
I'm not.
It'd be a really fun time.
Oh, dude, great time.
Yeah, so,
Did you guys do a safari?
We did. I did the
Oh,
little
gosh.
three. I got all little three of them. I took a kudu, I took a warthog, and I took an impala while we were out there. That was an absolutely fantastic trip. Hunting notwithstanding, it was an absolutely fantastic trip.
I've driven an Impala a few times. I don't.
Yeah, I want to get that one. Chevy drives up to the watering hole.
There'll probably be a new car commercial, man.
Oh man,
Some of the car commercials are ridiculous.
Enterprise, you have cars. Get on this.
But it's a good point.
People driving actual Impalas.
Dude, I remember when the Ford Edge first came out, and they had it somehow up on top of buildings, driving on just the two wheels on the edge of the building. It was the Ford Edge.
Yeah, it
made no sense.
No, of course not.
Okay, whatever. I digress.
The advertisement, going back to the medium thing, the advertisement is not meant anymore to really describe what the product is good for. It's meant to entertain you enough to go, hey, that looks cool, and that's
That's
kind of what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but what have you. Anyway, back to travel. South Africa. Tell me more about it. South Africa.
South Africa. From the Midwest, Avenue. Cincinnati. South Africa was absolutely gorgeous. It's not like people think about Africa and they think the entire continent is just like one disease-ridden war zone, but it's not. Like South Africa in particular is it's a functioning society. It's they've got multiple capitals. There's a cultural capital, trade capital, political capital, all that. And the countryside is absolutely gorgeous. So you walk up a mountain and you just like look out over the savannah, and there's nothing comparable to it because the air is clear. There's just wildlife all around you. The people are really nice.
Yeah.
There's a lot to learn too. There's a lot to just take in and absorb.
Wow. What if you had to compare it to a part of the U.S.? What would you compare it to? What state?
This is gonna sound really lame, but Payne's Prairie. You ever been to Payne's Prairie?
Oh, where is that?
Okay, so first of all, go Gators. Second of all, it's in Gainesville.
Okay.
So yeah, so where University of Florida is. There's this kind of removed, very savanna-like ecosystem. It's kind of sort of glades, but it's also kind of sort of not. And you can just go walk around in there, and there's wild horses, and there's bison for some reason, and there's gators everywhere. And so it's an organic ecosystem. You just walk around, and it's like, oh, so nature's just here. Okay, fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely beautiful, and it's only a 2-hour drive north. So yeah, make it happen, LaJoy.
Yes, I guess I should.
Yeah.
Big fan of wild horses.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting topic actually. I should have a I don't know what their specific job title is, but almost, I guess some type of biologist, but the folks that are out west and they focus on that ecosystem and how there's overpopulation of Mustangs.
Oh,
And
really?
so yeah, that's a very interesting topic. And the little bit I know about it, basically there's so many horses and burros, and they populate, and they don't have a lot of predators. There's like mountain lions or cougars, pumas, there's several names for those, but that's pretty much their only predator out there, and then the winners, obviously. But despite all these things, they populate basically at an alarming rate. And what's happening is they're overgrazing the grass out there, and so they're eating it down, and then the deer, the bison, the elk, all the other types of animals that are out there and also need that grazing ground, they're dying, and their populations are decreasing because they don't populate as quickly as horses and as guaranteed, if you will, as horses. It's a little bit more of a delicate pregnancy, I guess, for some of the other animals. So anyway, horses are overgrazing it, but I mean, come on, how are you gonna slow that down, right? I mean, no one wants to go out and hunt a horse.
No,
I mean, it's one of man's best friends, right?
Exactly.
So it's actually really cool. The U.S. government has a program. They actually take choppers out and they round up these horses. It's kind of sad to watch it happen because the horses are just freaked out of their minds.
Yeah.
But it's better, I guess, than going out and shooting them.
Yeah.
So they take them in, and then certain young fit ones and what I don't know exactly how they spread it out, but they let some of them go and they keep others, and then with the ones they keep, they put them up for adoption, and adoption is free.
Wow.
It's FREE.
Free horses.
Free horses.
Why isn't everybody talking about this?
Right. So well, the only issue is you pick them up, you got to train them. These horses are, they are wild Mustangs. Personally, I think Mustangs are some of the coolest horses in the entire world, on the entire planet. They are so hardy. They are like the spirit of America, right? And I would love to move out west, get a couple of these horses and train them. Be so hard, but I would absolutely love it, and it would be so rewarding. But anyway, so it's totally free, and there's a really good documentary called Unbranded. Check that one out. These 4 college friends get some horses, they train them, and they ride them from Arizona up to Canada. Wow. Really cool, beautiful scenery. It's a gorgeous documentary, amazingly shot. So it's a cool story. And he talks a little bit about that horse and burro adoption center as well. It's in Nevada, I believe.
Wow. Okay.
And there's also one maybe in Kansas.
That's
pretty
really
cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I need to have someone on to talk more in depth about that, because I want to learn more about it too.
Yes, horse people, get on the show.
Yeah. It's a very real issue, though.
Yeah, no, for sure. The part of that is probably because of the perception of horse ownership today. Industrialization in this country really kind of shifted a lot of different dynamics. So it used to be everyone had a horse. That was just kind of how you get around. I mean, sure, they're a little expensive, but it's cheaper than train cars. With the development of the automobile, especially under Henry Ford, it becomes a lot more economically accessible, especially in further east and more densely populated areas, to drive a car instead of riding a horse. And then over time, as demand increases for automobiles, demand decreases for horses. So those that are being rounded up, sold, trained, etc., get more and more expensive. So now, 21st century, it's seen as kind of a rich person thing to own horses, whereas everyone's got a car. And so the dynamic has shifted. So I think like you said, this isn't being talked about. Probably one of the reasons it's not being talked about is because there's this imperception, a misconception of how accessible these horses are. I mean, sure, granted, you need a lot of room to house them. Yeah, that's an issue too. But the horse itself is free. That's amazing. This nation was built on the backs of horses, and there's fewer things that you can do to mitigate this very real problem you're talking about. Then you go out there, adopt a horse, put it on some land, ride it, teach your kids how to ride it, have some fun, have a good time. Yeah, it's honestly, I grew up with horses, and that was one of the I think mentally and emotionally most relaxing things I've ever done in my life. There's nothing quite like getting on a horse, going out into the woods or the fields or whatever. All you hear is nature around you, and it's you and your horse, right? Right? Yes. And you hear the squeak of the leather, the saddle underneath you, and the horse is a little thing, right? Yes. All that stuff. Great. And it's just, dude, it's awesome. My dogs used to run along with me, and they'd be up and about, kicking up rabbits and whatnot, and I'd just be watching everything happen. It's cool, man. That sounds like paradise, man. Just getting out, getting away from everything. Just you, the horse, and the dog, just having fun. That's awesome. I feel very fortunate to have been raised in that type setting, and have that ability to do that stuff. It's great. But we talked a little bit about this, totally shifting gears. That's what we do. We talked a little bit about the pyramids, man. A little bit. And I want to get to that. That's why I'm shifting the gears so suddenly. I really want to talk about it because you mentioned how people think that the slaves built the pyramids, but that's not actually the case. It's the Prince of Egypt perception of the pyramids, right? So great movie. It is a fantastic movie. The soundtrack, love it. So you see the opening scene, and you see the Hebrews, and they're suffering, they're toiling, they're laboring away, and they're building these fantastic works that we look back to Egypt and remember today. The pyramids, though, are the exception to that rule, because they were such an important aspect and such a key part of religious life in a day and age when religious life was tied so closely with civil life, that it was just a matter of trust. Like, hey, this pyramid is going to be topped in gold. Who should we give the gold to in order to form it to the top of the pyramid? Ah, yes, the person who has absolutely nothing and nothing to lose. No, they would never do that. So the slaves, while they would have done a lot of manual labor associated with building the pyramids, the actual construction and the laying of blocks and everything, making sure everything was exactly where it needed to be, would have been done by a very specialized and state-trained, essentially burgeoning middle class in Egyptian society. Which is interesting because with economic enfranchisement comes industry. So, I mean, what more proof do you need than the fact that these pyramids, though not as lustrous as they were in ancient times, they're still there. Like they've stood the test of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's no wonder that they are one of the wonders of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see them. Unfortunately, it's a little risky to go over there right now, but I really hope that in my lifetime I get to go over and check those out, because I've spoken to people who have seen them, and they don't really have a word to describe it. They're just like, yeah, I was in awe. Like, you stand at the bottom and you look up, and it's incredible how big they are.
Yeah, they're bigger than
That's
people think
awesome.
they are. It's really great. And all of North Africa in general. Not to get too far away from the pyramids, but just if you could start on the North Africa side of the Strait of Gibraltar and just walk across the Maghreb, like from Morocco to Egypt. There is no shortage of fantastic, amazing things to see, all of which are culturally relevant to just about every society that exists. I mean, can you imagine just walk up into Tunis and there's Carthage. It's still there. The ruin of Carthage is still there. Like, you can just go see it, and it's just standing, and just walk around and be a tourist and take pictures of Carthage. It's an amazing experience that every human being should definitely set aside time to do, is just explore your heritage, because the sad thing about heritage in a day and age focused more on what comes next, like the throwaway generation, if you will, is that a lot of our heritage is dying. It's just disappearing before our eyes, and there's nothing we can do about it.
And it's not being preserved.
Yeah.
It's all digital.
In many ways.
And it's very easy to be preserved now, but I gotta think some of that's just gonna be lost, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's something to be said for, the scrolls, the ancient
scrolls stuff,
And there's something to be said for that stuff. I mean, it survived, and now we have it, and we have it in museums. You're remembered by, a USB drive in a museum.
That's true.
This USB it contains Lajoyefullife podcast. No, but
all 500,000 episodes.
Yeah. Dude, we should do an episode where we go over to South Africa, visit your dad's friend, do the safaris, do the hunting, we'll do a podcast.
His name is George. He would love this. He'd be like,
George.
Like, welcome to this thing. He's
gosh.
He's Afrikaans, so he's got a really strong accent. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. He's so cool. Yeah.
You don't even do that.
The Joyful Life on the Road.
I'm going to be doing a tour this summer up to Ohio and Michigan, and do a lot of that stuff and interview some people up there that are really interesting. And so I'll get to take you with me and show you some of the scenery up there.
I've never been to Cincinnati.
It's a cool area, man. It really is. Well, yeah, that's more Las Vegas, right?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
They don't have the fun thing with the name, though.
Yeah. But I've heard people call it Cincinnati, and I take offense. It's not nasty. It's great.
The real one is Tallahassee.
Gator fan over here.
I'm married to Gator, so
yeah. You gotta.
Yeah, I'm in by proxy now.
Yeah, you gotta support the team.
Yeah.
Well,
that's a great idea. Just take a Joyful Life on the road and say, hey, this is a Joyful Life. I'm standing right now in Tunis.
Right?
Yeah.
It would be like I could be like a reporter.
Yeah,
it'd be like Globe Trekker. That's a great show.
Or like This American Life, only it's like This La Joyful Life.
Yeah, that's a great.
I'm standing in Lisbon, former capital of the colonized world, or the colonizing world.
Dude, we're gonna have to, after this, I'm gonna have to take notes on where to go and do this stuff.
There is no bad place to go. There's so many things to see, and so many perspectives to learn, and so many just different things to absorb. Especially those. All right, I'm gonna vent for a little bit here. Can I vent for a little bit here?
Yeah, man. We're about to wrap it up, so you get your vent out, and then and then we'll close it up.
So there was you asked my favorite thing, my favorite period in all history. Probably my favorite thing that I've ever studied and that I've ever taught is the Byzantine Empire. I can't, in essence, go into why. It just is. It simply is great. It's fantastic because it's a continuation of the Roman Empire. It's a legitimate continuation of the Roman Empire, and there's a lot of things that the Byzantines will contribute to our heritage, not just Western heritage, but human heritage. I say that because they're so geographically perfectly placed between West and East. So peoples from all walks of life, from all cultures, can kind of draw from the things they contribute. One of the best things they ever contributed is the most impressive set of defensive walls in the world. Yes, even more so than the Great Wall of China, because these walls actually did something. Yeah, it's called the Theodosian Walls. It's essentially if you could defend yourself with a nuclear bomb in medieval times, these walls are the most equivalent thing to a nuclear bomb. You got 3 layers of defense. It's dug so deep that you literally can't go under it. There's a moat. There's places for archers. There's places for Greek fire to be thrown out. And it's absolutely beautiful. The only reason the walls didn't successfully defend the city from Turkish invasions was because someone left a gate open.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. Yeah, someone just walked in. That's the only way they circumnavigated the walls. Well, they circumvented the walls. So
did the Turks have a guy named Joshua and they blew the trumpets?
yeah, they walked around. Yeah, you couldn't walk around it because it went from coast to coast.
Wow.
So I know, and they're still there. So the rant here is that they're crumbling. They've not been maintained since the conquest. They're still there because they're an impressive feat of Roman engineering.
Yeah.
But they're slowly, year by year, just becoming less and less there. I think the UN declared it like an endangered heritage site.
Oh, man.
So now rant over. the walls serve as an example of how fragile heritage is and how fragile history is. And it's just one example over a long human existence of mistakes and of things that were learned, that were unlearned, and had to be learned again. So if anybody out there listening to Lajoyful Life can take one thing away from this massive history teacher's rant, it's that you need to get out, and in order to live your best life, in order to fulfill your mind, body, heart, and soul, you need to see the world, because it's fantastic. It's got a lot to offer, and some of those things will not be around for long. So get out there,
dude. That's a good point. I don't think I can end any better than that. That was perfectly said, and I think we'll just wrap it up there, man. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey.
And folks, if you enjoyed the show, if you enjoyed the episode, please share it. And let's definitely check out some of the places we talked about today. Talked about some really cool travel spots. And, get out there and check it out, because everything he said is exactly right. The more you see, the more you have appreciation for. Learn from history. Learn from our ancestors and our forefathers who came before us, because, we can learn from their mistakes and we can learn from their successes. So, live your best life, do the best you, treat everyone with kindness and respect, and learn as much as possible. Until next time, have a great day. Stay happy, stay humble, continue to be